Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Operational Edge. This is our episode 7, first of the new year in 2025. So, welcome to the new year. Happy New Year. I am here, as always, with my co host, David Lee. Hey, David, how's it going?
Great, Marsha. How about yourself? Have a good Christmas?
Doing awesome. It was great. Great.
Good. So today we've got an exciting new episode for you. We've actually got our first guest, and Mr. James Hoare has kindly agreed to be our guinea pig. So thank you so much for that. I was looking up a little bit on Jim's LinkedIn profile before the podcast, and he advertises himself as an automation and digital strategist, which I think is a very noble job title. He's currently business development director with, if I get this wrong, ADT. DT. And he'll tell us a little bit some of the technology that company is promoting into the industry a little later in the podcast. So welcome, Jim. Thanks for agreeing to do this with us.
Thank you for having me. Yes, absolutely. I feel honored that I'm your first guest. I hope I do you justice.
Well, hopefully you will after the podcast too. So let's see where it goes today. But thank you. So obviously the goal of the podcast for us normally is to talk about technology, but we also like looking at people as part of the industry. So tell us a little bit about how you got into the industry. You've had a little bit of a different route to maybe some of us, but that's what makes this industry so great. People come from very different walks of life and different industries. So if you could share that would be great, please.
Sure. Yeah. As a child, I always had an interest in electricity. I don't know what it was about it, but when I was very young, I just couldn't understand how it works. So I started about with my own experimentation. I think the first thing I did to test electricity was I unplugged the fan in my room. I think I was 6 years old, and I cut the cord on it and plugged it back in and touched the two wires together. And of course, my father and my mother came running in the room, and they were like, "What did you do?" I go, "I was just playing around with this electricity," and they were like mortified. They were afraid I was dead. And so my dad understood. My mother was, of course, was freaking out, and this is like 1970, and my dad, of course, nurtured it. He bought me these little kits. He started buying me these little kits you'd get from Radio Shack or Tandy Corporation was the parent company, I think, at the time. And so they had LEDs and they had different little things, capacitors and resistors, and you could make it do different things. And I really enjoyed that. It was fun. And then my father actually passed away early on. So we were very poor after that. I mean, there's no way you could think your dad's going to die when he's 39 years old. And so we were very poor. In fact, I tell people tongue in cheek, we were hide food from each other poor, for a while there. In fact, it was my mother hiding food from me because I ate everything in sight. I was just a growing boy. But I still kept that fire burning about electricity and automation. I decided when I was in the 9th grade, I was going to be an electrical engineer. And I had no way of knowing how I was going to pay for it or anything because we didn't have any money. And I was a bright student. I mean, at least I got told that in high school and junior high. And so I made really, really good grades. Of course, I had that desire from the 9th grade on. And so I started saving my money. I got jobs in high school. I worked at a place called Corn Dog 7. I'm making corn dogs. Then I worked at a deli called the Good Times Deli, making sandwiches, and I saved everything. And then finally my stepdad came to me. My mother got remarried a few years after my dad passed. And he said, I got this friend that owns a jewelry store. He wants to give you a job. You should consider that. So he was thinking more along the line, hey, this is a craft. You will get a craft and you'll be able to do something for the rest of your life. You'll be a jeweler, and I thought, I can do that. That'll be fun because I used to love to put model airplanes together. Just anything I could do to create was fun. So I went in and I remember I dressed in a suit to go to this job, and they laughed at me when I walked in. They said, dude, you need to put a t-shirt on and some jeans. You're going to be working in the back and you're going to be polishing at first. So went home, redressed, came back to work, and they taught me how to polish jewelry. And so I did that for about 6 months. And then in the interim, I'd polish everything and get everything ready. When when you size a ring or you set a stone or you do anything to create a piece of jewelry, it has to be polished, and there's a polishing process. And I got decent at that, and I got so good I would finish early, and then I wouldn't have anything to do. So my boss said, "Hey, why don't you try and solder these pieces of chain together?" So he'd give me some old scrap stuff, and I'd sit there at this little bench, and I would solder things together, and I got pretty good at that. So I took on all of the chain repair. I mean, people would come in from high school, and their boyfriends or girlfriends would buy them the chain, and then they'd break it invariably. They'd bring it in, and I'd solder it back together, polish it, and hand it back to them. So and so then I took on wholesale businesses, and then I became kind of I got all the scraps. I was the guy that fixed everything that was so easy to fix that they could trust me with it. So uh, then after the first or second year, I was working in high school, and then I knew I wanted to go to engineering school, and so I went and signed up. I used everything that I saved. I went and signed up at a local community college to get the basics. And I would write a letter to the registrar at the University of Arkansas, because I knew that's where I wanted to go. And I would tell them what classes I planned to take at Texas Community College to make sure they would transfer. And everyone that I selected, well, some I selected that wouldn't transfer, so I didn't take them. But everyone that I took at University or at Texas Community College transferred over to University of Arkansas. And I took 44 hours, and I was almost at a 4 point, and I had saved all my money. I worked as a jeweler, and when I went in to tell my boss I wanted to move to college, because I kind of kept it a secret, because you never know, the changing fortunes of time. You never know if you're going to actually be able to do it, And I had a girlfriend at that time, and you know how that is. I mean, things can change depending on how your relationship progresses, um, but no, I stuck to the plan, and I went in to tell him, and I said, "Hey, they had this. This is so cool. They had this room called the lunchroom. Nobody ever ate lunch in it. I don't know why. Not this day, I don't know why they call it the lunchroom. I asked him to come to the lunchroom because that's normally where you would go if you were in trouble or you were going to get a raise. They said, "Hey, meet me in the lunchroom," and people were like, "Oh, I gotta find out what happens if he got called to the lunchroom." So I asked my boss to say, "Hey, would you meet me in the lunchroom?" And it surprised the hell out of everybody, because never did you ask the boss to meet you in the lunchroom. And so he met me, and I told Danny, I said, "Hey, for a long time I've been wanting to go and pursue my electrical engineering degree, and I'm going to go ahead and give you my notice. It's going to happen in a couple of months. I'm going to go to University of Arkansas, and I've been accepted, and paid the deposits and everything I need to pay." And he's got this big smile on his face. And I said, is that okay? I said, I hate to do this to you, but because I know you have a business around, blah, 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 blah. And he goes, "Jim," he said, "I've known this for a long time." He said, "You're going to junior college. Why would you just stop at junior college?" He said, "In fact," he said, "I've found you a job at a jewelry store up there. I've got a friend of mine that owns one." He said, "I worked in it, and he's ready for you whenever you get up there. Just go see him." And I thought I was going to cry. And then, of course, everybody took up a collection. They gave me extra money for school, and I went off to Fayetteville and got my degree in 3.5 years, in addition to the 44 hours that I'd taken in the 2 years since I graduated high school. So that was probably the greatest experience of my life, And Danny and I are still friends to this day. In fact, I talked to him about 3 weeks ago. He's getting ready to retire, and I told him on the phone, I said, "You're responsible for my career. You're responsible for me being able to go to college." And he said, "Dude," he said, "I got as much out of you as you think you got out of me. Don't worry," and it's nice that we're still friends to this day. But, going to college, we could spend hours talking about college, just as you could probably spend hours talking about college. So I won't really dwell on that unless you want to hear anything. But I continued the push toward automation. I knew I didn't really want to be a power systems guy. So I took control systems in college. I took, different courses. In fact, I took enough programming courses where I could get a minor in computer science. And when I got out, everybody has this desire to work in the coolest industry when they get out, and they think, "Hey, I really want to do something cool and impactful." So I interviewed with Texas Instruments, and I got a job as a quality assurance engineer over the new stealth fighter. It was the Raptor. And I was the quality assurance engineer over the mission display processor, which was this big, bulky card-based computer, almost like a PLC, that sat in the nose cone. And the pilot got in with a cassette and plugged a cassette into this this thing in the cockpit, and the Raptor would almost fly itself, and it was amazing. It had a heads-up display, and this next phrase is going to kill you. I hated it because I was looking at. I mean, it was nice. Once the novelty wore off, that I was working on a jet fighter, and they call it an advanced tactical fighter. I was working on it. It was so cool. I couldn't tell anybody about it, because I was. I mean, you couldn't tell. You had to sign an agreement, and it involved the government. So you would go to jail if you tell anybody what you did. So I hated it because I was literally looking under a microscope every day, looking at solder joints on these boards, and there was a gray area where it didn't quite match the quality metric, but it still worked. So I would have these meetings with these government reps and say, they essentially take them to lunch and say, hey, would you accept these? And just wine and dine these guys to get them to accept this lower quality. And of course, it was fun, but I called my second choice after about May, and I was a December grad, so I went to work in January. And in May, I called my second choice. It was this international paper, and they said, well, we thought you were going to graduate in May. We have an offer ready for you. So I went up to see them in Texarkana, and they hired me on the spot. They said, here's your offer. When do you want to start? And I said, well, I'll start June 19th. That's about the time when I can give an adequate notice and be good about it and not leave them in the lurch. And then they actually threw me a party at Texas Instruments. I felt bad about leaving. So I went to work and stayed friends with folks. Even to this day, I remember my boss's name was Ron Rickert. He was a great guy. I hadn't talked to him in years and years though, but so I went to work for International Paper as an instrumentation electrical engineer, and I loved it. I thrived. I mean, I'd made mistakes, of course, and that's the only way you learn. But I loved it, and I continued to do work orders, and they called them plant alterations and that kind of thing, and I continued to do those. And then my wife, I got married the first year I was at International Paper, and I'm still married to the same woman today. I've been married 35 years, and she became a little dejected, and I could tell she wasn't excited about her career because she worked as a loan officer assistant at Texarkana, or this is a bank in Texarkana. I think it was First Bank or U.S. Bank or something like that. And I said, well, let's start looking. If you want to go somewhere, we'll start looking for a job. And it was easy for me to say that because I kept getting all these calls from recruiters. And of course, back then, I had a telephone with a push button dial, which was like space age, right? Because everybody else is used to a rotary dial phone, and you can't tell who's calling you, so you just pick the phone up. So almost every other call I'd get, the only way you could tell that you were getting an outside number because it would ring quick. It would ring, and if it was from the inside the plant, it would just go ring, ring, ring. So it was a different pulse, but. So I answered the phone, and about every other time it was a recruiter. It'd start to hit you at like 3 to 5 years, right? And so I said, yeah, I'll start looking. So I started entertaining, requests from recruiters. And they sent me to several places around the United States. And the place that I liked the most was Houston because I interviewed with a Belgian company called Solvay. And Kim said, that's great. There's lots of financial institutions in Houston I can go and I can spend time finding a job. So we just had our first child. She had just she just turned 1 by the time we took this job. And I come to Houston, and we were living in temporary housing. They afforded us a couple of months of temporary housing before we could find where we wanted to live and all that. So Kim took 2 months to find a job, and she went to work for NASA, which is so cool. And she's worked for NASA ever since. In fact, she's there working today, right? And her company, that's the NASA subcontractor. In fact, like 99% of all NASA employees are subcontractors. they do all the space shuttle programming, which is right up my alley. I was like, this is awesome. The first job they ever got from the NASA was to be able to get communications during the entire flight of the space shuttle, whereas in the past they had a little bit of a blackout period from time to time. So this person figured out how to, black out all of those blackout periods so that you could communicate as the shuttle went around the Earth. And their company is a minority-owned company. His wife actually owns the company, and so they were hit on again by NASA. NASA would say, "Please give us more, give us more, give us more," and that's how they built their company. And so I've remained friends with the bosses for years and years and years and years since Tim started, because we have the same mindset. We want to change things and automate things, make things work better. So when I went to work for Solvay, I had at International Paper, I had taken on a global project to convert all of their panel controls over to DCS. And I'd finished the powerhouse and I moved everything. Remember, it was a Honeywell PM. And you can that kind of dates me, right? Because now there are several iterations past that, of course. But we had just moved from highway equipment to UCN and upper control network and lower control network devices, and I put in the first PM, and it was so much fun. I mean, I had so much fun. You ever heard you ever heard guitarists that have this medical condition because they forget to breathe? They're playing, they forget to breathe because they're concentrating on playing the guitar. I'm not a guitarist, so I'm not getting into that, but I would go and I'd forget to eat. I'd forget to eat and I'd forget to go home. Kim would call me and she'd say, "Where are you?" And I go, "I don't know, I've been working. What time is it?" She goes, "Like 7 o'clock. I mean, people had filtered out of the building. There's nobody there. And I'm in there working by myself because I loved it. And yeah, back then you had to do your own drawings and you had sepia. You had sepia and wax pencils and a big drawing board. You didn't have AutoCAD. In fact, I was the first person in the company to get AutoCAD because I wanted to do all this work. So anyway, so Solvay hired me for that reason. They heard out on the blogosphere of the time, which was just people calling people and getting information on folks. And they said, "Hey, we understand you've done some conversions. We want you to come and do some conversions." So I interviewed and I got the job. So the first 5 years I was there, I did nothing but conversions. And they had the largest polyethylene reactor site, a single site in the world. So I had 12 reactors, and only 2 of them had been built built without panel control, built with a DCS. So of course, it was a lot of the same work that David does with his company, around getting the HMIs right. So I had to get someone to do that. And then I did all of the instrumentation conversion. I did all of the PLC algorithms, getting those taken out of the PLC and put in the DCS, all this. It was a lot of fun. And then they ruined me and they promoted me to automation engineering manager. And then from then on, I've been in management. But I couldn't get away from automation because I love it. I mean, and the reason I love it is because it's so ubiquitous in what we do in our lives. I mean, when I give conferences or give talks at colleges and high schools, I challenge the students. I say, okay, look around you, think about what you got on your person, think about what's in the room, think about what you got at home. I challenge you to find something that wasn't touched by automation. And of course, people try. And then I explain to them now that, like one guy said, "Well, I've got some handwritten notes from my grandfather in a pen." And I said, "Is it in pencil or pen?" He goes, "It's in pen." And I said, "Well, the ink was probably created through an automated process," and explain how that happens. And so there's and it rings true. I mean, automation is where it's at, and it's even becoming more ubiquitous because of AI. Which it's like nobody has seen the movies about AI taking over the world. It's like they're completely oblivious. I mean, we're all going to get destroyed by this. We all know we are, but we're going forward. So anyway.
Well, I think it's interesting too that looking at
that's
your
how I got
career.
into it. It was a lifelong process, and I just love it and still love it. Obviously, I can't hide that, So sorry it took so long to explain it.
But I think it's obvious that you have a tremendous passion for technology. But again, on LinkedIn you say a lot about team building, a lot about building teams, successful teams, and making the individuals perform better. So obviously that's the other side of it. And as you said, as you moved into management, obviously that became more of a focus as well as the technology. So that sounds like another sort of parallel passion that you have to develop people, grow people.
It is. I mean, I realized early on, of course, when you're an individual contributor, I don't care who you are, okay? If you're an individual contributor, everybody sits there and they secretly harbor all this negative, opinions and negative comments or things around their boss or their boss's boss or things like they're not doing it right, they don't know what they're doing, blah 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 blah. But I would collect things that if I ever get in power, I'm going to do something different. And the main thing was I'm going to listen to the people that work in my group. And one thing was I would never introduce anybody as somebody that works for me. And it was a shock to the people that when I first got a management job, of course, we're all sorts of different situations where I would introduce people that worked in my group. I'd always say, this is so and so. They work with me at Solvay, or we work together at this company. And I could see the surprise in their face. They're like, wow, you never once said Jim works for me or Jim reports to me or anything like that. There was no superiority about how we work together. In fact, in the first review as a manager I got, the boss said, Jim does not subscribe to the caste system. There are no classes of people. Everybody's a team. And one of the things that I like doing the most is trying to keep us from making mistakes. And it doesn't mean perfection, because we are going to make mistakes. That's where you really learn. That's where you get it. But to help, everyone succeed, I just tried to foster collaboration. And I would tell people, I'd say, especially new people that came in, their orientation, they'd say, well, you're giving me a lot of responsibility. I'm just not sure that I'm ready for that much responsibility. And I said, don't worry, we're not going to let you fail. And they went, what do you mean you're not going to let me fail? I said, we're not going to let you fail. If you fail, it's on all of us. The company doesn't do well. It's our group. It's a microcosm here of a bigger company. But if you fail, we fail as a group. The company has to spend money to fix whatever it is. We're all going to help you. And so the first thing you had to do is you had to break down the competition that helps. So there's a little bit of healthy competition that's good, because you want to do that. Like, for instance, I'd say, okay, whoever does the best on this, whoever does the best on this, that, or whoever creates the most work orders will get tickets to go see this, and I'd buy them out of my own pocket, just to get a little bit of healthy competition. But there was never competition where people withhold information, because that's the negative part, right? If someone knows how to do something, everyone should know how to do that. So I would foster training courses where, once every other week, everybody would get together, part of our staff meeting, and they would train somebody on something new that they did. So they train the group. They'd say, this is how I did this is how I did that. So it helped propagate the understanding, and it helped propagate, the understanding of new technologies in the groups, and people loved it. And I actually got criticism from other managers for leading that way, which was strange to me. And I just kind of blew it off, like, yeah, okay, no, you lead the way you want to lead. I'm gonna lead the way I want to lead. And they were like, yeah, but it's causing me. Everybody looks at your group, and y'all are so happy and everything's good. They all want to leave my group and go to your group. And I go, well, what do you want me to do? You want me to do a crappy job so you can be more successful? I mean, so I think, the way to build teams is right in front of your face. It's easy. You just have to have compassion for people and understanding of what they're going through, because they're going through the same stuff you're going through, and the same stuff everybody's going through. You want to help them succeed. You want to, and you talk to them. It's a dialogue that happens monthly or weekly or yearly, at different topics, of course, in different levels, but you dialogue with them to say, what do you want to do? Do you want to be an engineer the rest of your career, the rest of your life? Or you want to be CEO? If you want to be CEO, I'll help you be CEO. If you want to be an engineer, I'll help you climb that technical ladder. I'll help you do whatever you want to do. Because my job is not only to do the tactical work we have, it's to set the company up for future success, to help people move to the levels they're going to be most successful at, or they're going to love the most, right? So I had pretty good retention. I had very little overturn or turnover with the group, and so it was good. The only problem was me. I would get very bored in what we were working on, because once I had it done, it was really it was almost perfunctory. It was the same thing over and over and over. And I would get a call from somebody. So after 10 years of working at Solvay, I got a call from Lyondell, and I went to work for them at a refinery. And I worked 8 years there, and it was in a maintenance and reliability function. And so it was a little bit something different. That kind of underscores, if I get bored with something, I want to learn something new. I want to lead something different, and I enjoyed doing that. And then after that, I kept swimming upstream, if you will. I swam upstream oil and gas, and went to work for Occidental Petroleum. Initially, it was to build their reliability program worldwide for electricity and automation systems and instrumentation. I did that for about a year, and then they promoted me and asked me to help do the same thing within the automation team, which to help write policies and standards and procedures on how to get things done. So everybody does things the same way around the world. I did that, and then I got promoted again, and then I ended up working there almost 11 years. And here I am. I went to work for PureCycle. And PureCycle, I had the same experience, a similar experience, just at a different level. When I worked for PureCycle, the brand new company had never had a plant. They were building one and getting ready to build one by the time I went to work for them. Pardon me. And I decided that I was going to live my dream automation life, right? And I dubbed it Born Digital. So I wrote a white paper before that on how to be born digital, and meaning it's not just about the fourth industrial revolution. It's about organizing in a way and progressing in a way where you build what you're going to build like a planned community. And you don't tolerate people who just say, I'm going to buy this piece of software because I like it, and I've used it before. And when I say anybody, I mean like VPs of the company. So I took the job and I said, look, I'll take the job, but I don't want anybody to have any governance over anything that has an electron. I don't care what it is, whether it's power, whether it's automation, whether it's IT equipment, a computer, a phone, anything that has an electron, I want to be over. And so the CEO of the company said, okay, I dub you king of electrons. And he would introduce me that way. It was so funny. We would have conferences, at different times, and he'd introduce me. Jim is our king of electrons. Take it away, Jim. And I'd explain whatever I was there explaining. And I enjoyed it. And so it took us 6 months. It took us 6 months to build a team, and to kind of finish up on your question about teamwork is I've selected people. About half the people I selected I already knew, and convinced them to come on board because I knew they would be strong advocates of how to build a plant born digitally. And then also that we're great at teamwork. That they didn't have egos. They didn't have this sense of they wanted to climb the ladder and step on whoever they could step on to get there. And then the rest I interviewed, and some were people who knew people. So there were only a couple of degrees of separation there. So that worked out well. So we built that team. And once we built the team, we took an incredibly, guarded and cautioned approach in how we selected everything. And I remember it took us 8 or 9 weeks just to do the topography on the network. And then every single software package that anybody in the company wanted to buy, we had to take through a very rigorous review process to make sure that it fit. We had this philosophy and this vision of having a data lake for people to feed from as a trough, and then have a data fabric that they couldn't feed from. And that was part of the cybersecurity approach. So we took our time and we built it like a planned community. we built that plant, certainly like I had never seen before, and I was giddy every day. And again, like the guitarist that forgets to breathe, I was working 16 hours a day. Literally, people would tell me the next day, I just got an email from you at 2 a.m. I said, well, I was busy. I'm sorry. I didn't, I'll make it so it doesn't come into your email box. Microsoft has a feature where you can say, don't deliver until 6 a.m. or don't deliver at 7. And I would start to do that because I didn't want people, I was vice president. And I didn't want people to think, hey, you got to respond to me right now. And some of them did. I'd send an email to somebody and literally they said, well, I got out of bed because you sent me this email and I wanted to respond to you. And I go, dude, don't do that. You know? So, but anyway, so I was just consumed by the job. I loved it, and unfortunately, the process was way more difficult. The physical process that we had gotten from Procter and Gamble, it wasn't the process. They had the technology. We built the process around the technology, but still there were parts of it that didn't work the way they had planned. And to this day, they're still trying to get the plant running. I turned the last ceremonial bolt on April 23rd of 2023, and they still haven't got the plant run at rates. I think the most they've gotten is 1 million pounds in 1 week. They had a run where they were able to do that, and they're supposed to make 1 million pounds every 3 days. So they got close to half rates, but they're still struggling. And the CEO is a friend of mine. I've known him for 20 years. He's a great guy, got a great staff, but of course, with the struggles, of course, the financial community looked at them and said, well, we're not going to invest any more money until you work these kinks out. So we lost funding for our next facility. And I'd already built a more digital process in the group. So we ended up laying off 26 people, including the chief financial officer, because we couldn't get funding. And then also we couldn't hire anybody. So we got rid of most of the HR staff and we got rid of the entire PMO, and I was included, right? But they treated me well. I have no animosity because they really treated me well, so that I could leave the company and pursue something else. So that kind of rounds out my team building approach. I mean, I really, first of all, I believe in people, and I believe everybody wants the same thing. I mean, there are people who are not necessarily the type of people that I'd want to hire. And it's because they have this destructive self-interest, where they're not interested in the group, they're interested in themselves. And to be interested in yourself means you're interested in the group. Because if you're interested in the group, you're going to learn more and you're going to improve, you're going to progress at a greater clip than you would otherwise. And I don't understand how people don't get that,
Looking back on the technology in hindsight, is it an achievable dream? Born digital, or
Oh yeah,
even in the short time frame, there must have been a lot of changes, right?
Oh yeah. Well, so that's the point. So the change, the change is within each person. The change is if you build a facility from a born digital perspective, what you're saying is I'm not only going to adopt and progress toward the ultimate, you know, what do you call it? The industry 4.0. I'm not only going to progress toward that, I'm going to start with that. And I'm going to build my facility not only such that it's like a planned community, that where everything talks to everything else without having to do some transformation. In fact, we got T-shirts that said, transformation with a big circle on it and an X through it, like no transformation. We're not going to do that. And it's not only about that, but it's also building open doors where you say, okay, eventually this program is going to progress. So we're going to want to adopt that progression or that innovation, and you leave the door open for that. So you don't have to go through this digital transformation, right? So that was the most interesting thing. So I'll give you an example. So most people will build a plant and they'll say, hey, we need to have a network in the plant where not only does the instrumentation communicate to the DCS, we also want a wireless network so we can have instrumentation communicate to the DCS through that, so we don't have to pay additional fees to have additional cables run. So for non-critical instruments, and this is interesting because nobody had ever heard of criticality analysis when I went to this team, and I'd done criticality analysis for 10 years. And I said, well, you have to do a criticality analysis on the process. And they said, oh, yeah, we've done a PHA. Well, it's not the same. You don't do that. You have to do a criticality analysis to understand what you can live without and what you can live with, or what you have to live with. So once you do that, you build this wireless network. And they were like, hey, that's great. Let's move forward. Well, you can't move forward yet because you're going to want, from a maintenance perspective, you're going to want people out there with devices for maintenance, like not just a pad where they can do their records digitally. You also want them to have a RealWare lens that can communicate through the system where they can pull up a PNID while they're in the field. They can see the digitization of the system through the 3D model, where they can look at the 3D model. They can metaphorically touch a piece of equipment and see what that equipment is, whether or not you have spare parts for it, what spare parts you need to order. And you can do all your business without ever leaving the field. So you don't have to worry about people, okay, I got to write this on the back of a napkin so I can take it into the office and write a work order and try to get the part that I think I need and all that stuff. It's all tied together, so it changes the way you do business. And that's when I said it's about the people, it's harder for them if they've never worked in that environment to understand that it's effective. You can do it that way, right? So it's about designing the entire system around that. And some people will say, okay, it's the fourth industrial revolution. We need to have 3D models. Well, that's good, but if you want to have a 3D model, have your plant designed that way before you build it. Then you can take that 3D model and you can use it to integrate all these other things with it, right? So you build that network in the field to do that, which is part of the business network. But it's not the business network. It's the network that you will work internally. And if someone wants to access the internet, they have to have another network. So we built that plant with 4 networks that were all overlaying. And, the internal network, the reason I said you don't want that connected to the outside, because you have all your security in that. So all of our all of our cameras in the field watching things were all on that network. The network that allows you to enter a room with a badge, that's on that network. So if I had gone to the refinery and they said, hey, we're interested in digital transformation, what do you think we should do? I'd say, well, I think you need 4 networks in the plant. They'd run me out of the plant right then. I'd be fired. They go, get out. It's the wrong guy. Don't have him come back, right? But when you think about it in the beginning, it makes sense. And it's cheaper. I mean, it doesn't take much more to install, 4 fibers when you think about it. But if you install fibers in your network and you say, hey, we forgot we had to install another fiber, it's just as expensive as the first one. But if you involve installing 2 fibers in the same conduit, that's nothing, right? So when you build it that way, it's way less expensive. In fact, it's about 10% of what it would cost you if you went through a digital transformation and you went through this progression of adding things one at a time. So there's a lot of that to consider.
I think too, one of the great things that I saw was that you're willing to share what you learned. I was at an Emerson Exchange presentation where one of your team was sharing the progress that you'd done, the technology and the challenges. So I think that was excellent that you were able to sort of lift the bonnet or lift the hood and share your experiences, which that helped the industry as a whole. So I think that was a great part of it too.
I appreciate you saying that. I don't know if it helped the industry as a whole. I mean, a lot of ways I felt like I was bragging about what I was able to do because I loved it. It was so much fun. It was like, hey, guess what I got to do? Not that I did a fantastic job or that everything was seamless and perfect, and but I got to do it. It was so much fun doing it, and it goes along with team building. I mean, of course, I would never share the core process or the core technology because that's the that's the business of PureCycle. That's their intellectual property. But how we do it, how we put it together, as far as the topology and how the system works, everybody should know that. Everybody should hear it. And it's just like building a team. You want to make everybody successful, And throughout my career, one of the things that it shocked me at first, but it seemed to be wherever I went, you think that when you're young and you work in a company and you've made progress learning, you think, I'm not the exception to the rule. The rule is everybody learns as I learned. Everybody's learned the same thing. The technology's there. And you go to another plant and they're like, we've never heard of that stuff. And you're like, how can you not hear about this? I mean, I've used that for 3 years. Like, how did you not know that? And then you progress there where you have. I remember going to the refinery and my wife, I'd been there a month, and my wife said, what do you think? Are they progressed? And I said, it's like working with cavemen. It is. I mean, they have no technology. It's horrible. And I've got my work cut out for it. But I remember telling her I could work here for 10 years and continue to do a fabulous job and progress, and just so much low hanging fruit, right? I mean, it's just, you could just continue, you could work your tail off for 10 years and just to get back where I was at Solvay. And it was fun. It was a great journey, it was a great journey. It was fun. And, I got a lot of job satisfaction and of course, met some wonderful and just incredibly talented people that I know to this day, and, it was just a misconception on my part. I thought we all learned together, and we don't. It takes all people to really propagate information and get everybody on the same page. So
I was on a webinar of yours about a month ago or so, just before Christmas. And so now you've turned firefighter, right? Now you're supporting Smokey the Bear. So
okay,
a bit of a change for you, but it was very interesting. But again, sharing some technology with, at the time, ISA. So I guess tell us a little about that technology. It's exciting.
It's great. I never thought of myself as a business development person. In fact, when they interviewed me, I literally told them in the interview, I was interviewing with the CEO and the chief operating officer, and I said, look, I know Mark wants me to come on board, but I can't sell peanuts to a starving elephant. I'm not a salesman, I'm not a business development guy. I'm an engineer. And Alan, never forget what Alan Wong said. Alan said, Jim, we're all engineers. And I said, yeah, to a degree. He goes, no. He said, I only hire electrical engineers. That's it. I mean, and I was like, okay, I get that. Okay. He said, I will help you along. He said, I'm a terrible, I'm just as terrible at business development. I'm just as terrible at sales as you are. He said, but I'll help you along. We'll all work together. And that cinched it for me. I was like, that's exactly what I want. So what intrigued me most about the technology they have is, first of all, it is very unique. Most technologies that you'll hear about that are going around, and there's some amazing technologies out there. Most of these technologies, they say, well, if you have a fault, we can find that fault for you. We can tell you exactly where the fault is, so your maintenance guys don't have to go look for it. They can get on the trail, they can go out there, they'll know what the fault is, they can repair it faster, or we can detect whether you have a fire. If you have an electrically induced wildfire, we can detect that, and we can help you, get to that site, put the fire out quicker, so you don't have this huge wildfire that destroys homes. And of course, some of the worst fires in the United States over the last 100 years have been, believe it or not, electrically induced wildfires. The one in Lahaina over in Hawaii killed around 100 people and destroyed thousands upon thousands of homes. And it was completely unexpected. They felt like the foliage and the vegetation was too lush. It'll never burn. It's too lush to burn. And of course, with climate change, and climate change is real, whether you believe it's anthropogenic, caused by man, you can have that debate. That's fine. But the climate is changing. It always has been changing. And with the climate change that's occurred, in the last 10 to 20 years, it's made things more flammable. And when that fire kicked off, it was a raging fast fire. And it was all caused by a downed electrical line, right? We went over and talked to them for about 45 minutes, and they adopted our technology. So the electric company there that had that issues is bringing on our technology, as are others. But what I meant to say earlier was that, most of these technologies that are coming out, they tell you what happened quickly, but none of them tell you what might happen. And what ours does is it tells you, or what IND technology tells you, is you have a broken strand, one broken strand out of a dozen on a steel core cable 30 feet from this GPS location, and it's likely not going to break the line today, but you need to go look for it and fix it. That's what we tell them. They'll go out, and sometimes they have to look through a set of binoculars to find what we're talking about. In fact, they called us and said, we can't find it. You got to come out and show us during proof of concept, because there's a lot of training that goes on, whether it's tribal or whether it's hands-on or whatever you do, right? It's not book training. It's getting there and saying, okay, look through these binoculars and see that broken strand up there. They'll look at it, and you just see this surprise wash over their face, like, oh my gosh, I would have never seen that. And eventually it would have led to a failure. With the foliage here, it would have led to a wildfire, and here we are, right? So it can find that. It can find a broken insulator, on a cross arm. It can find tracking on a cross arm, it can find, coronas and cables. And the way it does it, it's very simple. Every anomaly that exists in a grid distribution system, electric distribution system, any anomaly by the laws of physics creates a radio signal. And what we do is we listen for those radio frequencies. And right now we're differentiating between radio frequencies so we can say what it is. We're trying to get that done by the summer, is to say, okay, we know it's a broken strand and here it's located. Right now we can tell them, you've got something wrong at this location, go find out what it is and fix it. So it helps them flip their narrative or their maintenance philosophy rather to a proactive maintenance rather than reactive maintenance. Because almost 100% of the 3,500 utilities in the United States are reactive. They're begging for maintenance people because they have problems they have to go repair. But if they had a system that told them, you've got a problem, it's not resulting in an outage yet, it's not resulting in a wildfire yet, if you go fix it, you won't have those two things, or you won't have either of those things. Every company that we go to where they review it, they do it. They say, okay, we want to do a proof of concept. One of the big things that's slowing people down is every regulator in every state and every county in the United States that regulates the work of the utility, they want to see a proof of concept. So I of course, this is, I'm 60 years old, and this is the me being naive, even at this age. I was learning, well, wait a minute, we already did a proof of concept over there in that county, in that state. Why don't these guys just read the paper? Let them do it. Well, because all these regulators are beholden to the customers that buy electricity. And they look at this bill and they go, oh, well, there's a 40-cent charge here, for reliability. I shouldn't have to pay that. Well, they want to be able to justify it. They say, hey, look, it's absolutely necessary for us to do this. It's 40 cents on your bill. It's not a big deal, but we're going to use that to pay for all these improvements so you don't have an outage. And be able to explain it to them, is good. But if you did it after the fact and it didn't do what you thought it would do, then you got a problem. Well, we thought we spent $10 million. We thought that we could fix it, but it turns out the technology wasn't good. So sorry, you still have to pay for it. Those are the things that get you fired or get you in trouble. So I completely understand why they want to do it. So when I did that, Alan Bryant, who's a colleague of mine, and Alan Bryant is probably the smartest person on the planet. Okay, I'm sorry to say that, but he is. I call him a super genius. In fact, I bought him. You have this thing when you walk in somebody's office and it has their name and their title and it has a little spot for their business cards. One year for Christmas, I bought him one of those, and it says Alan Bryant, super genius, and then it has a place for his card. So Alan, I said, Alan, I said, I know you want me to do this webinar. I said, I'm trying to think of a catchy title. So he sent me several examples, and one of them was Smokey Bear Goes Digital, which I thought was so cool. And this is going to intrigue people, and people are going to go look for it. But I had heard from several people, you can't use Smokey Bear without approval from the U.S. government. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
Really?
So I started looking into it, and they were right. It is a heavily trademarked and protected, subject. I mean, they they don't want you posting pictures of Smokey Bear. They don't want you using some of the phrases within it and the title and all that without approval. Well, during the pandemic, when the politicians had nothing else to do, they allowed people to start using it without getting sued. There have been people sued by the U.S. government for using it without permission. So I did my due diligence to make sure I could use that, believe it or not. That was the worst thing I had to do when I did that presentation, was trying to figure out whether I could use the title. But once I was allowed to do that, the webinar was really good. In fact, I got a lot of good feedback from people, and I was glad to do it. But it just shows that the way that automation and technology, especially IoT and edge networks and things like that, how they're progressing, it's just at such a rapid pace where now you can find where you might have a wildfire, and if you can propagate that technology through every utility, at least electrically induced wildfires will be a thing of the past. People don't know this, but wildfires, and we should probably all take a moment of silence to think about what's going on in LA right now. I mean, you have people that their houses are literally ashes today, and that's terrible. It's just horrible, and I'm waiting. It's not self-interest, but I'm waiting to learn whether or not it was electrically induced. Not so that I can go and take, go in there and swoop in like an ambulance chaser. We already have people in LA. I mean, we have clients that cover LA. We have the client that covers them. So, we want to know. We want to know what wasn't monitored, or whether it was a problem, or how we can fix it, right? But anyway, only 10% of wildfires that occur worldwide are electrically induced. So you're thinking, Jim, it's 90%. I mean, how much benefit are you going to really bring to the table? I mean, how much change are you going to bring to the table? Well, problem is electrical lines are everywhere. They're everywhere. They're ubiquitous in the world. So an electrically induced wildfire, the impact is way more than 10% of the worldwide impact. It may be in numbers 10% of the problem, but the impact is gigantic because it can happen anywhere. It's not like somebody going out, into a national park and building a fire to smoke their, just to smoke their brisket or cook their meal, and leaving the fire unattended, and creates a wildfire. With all the regulations and all the monitoring and everything we have, that's pretty good. I mean, we can really police that. But the electrical cables that are mindless, they're everywhere. And all it takes is one to fall in vegetation, create a wildfire, and then there you have it. So if you can prevent that, the impact you're going to have on the world can be stupendous. It's just amazing, right? So that's really what turned me on to this tool, is the change that it can make worldwide.
Yeah, I remember talking to you earlier, and one of the things that you said was, I would never work for a company which product I didn't believe in. And it's obviously that this is something that you're passionate about, and believe in the technology and its impact. So I guess as advice to young engineers and young professionals, that's a good way to look at, who do I want to work with? What do I want to contribute?
Yeah, I like to talk, and that's obvious. I mean, I've been here I've been soapboxing on several different things here, so sorry for that. But I've never looked at myself as a carnival barker. I'm not the kind of guy that stands out and say, "Hey, come see the two-headed person here," when I know it's not a two-headed person. I mean, I want to work and try to make a difference in whatever I do. And the reason for this, and I'll tell you. Okay, so I've had really good mentors my whole life, and I don't know what star I sailed under. I don't know what manner of phrase that I uttered or acted in, but I've been just blessed by amazing mentors. And one of my early mentors was my uncle on my dad's side. He took me aside and he said, the only way you're going to succeed in life, he said, I don't care what you do. He said, the only way you're going to succeed in life is that you make a difference every day. In the days that you don't make a difference, you need to reflect on and say, what caused me to not make a difference? And you have to dissect it, and you think, okay, well, what did I do? I learned something, so I made a difference in myself, or I had a huge impact on the company, so I made a difference. So if you live yourself by that set of values, and you say, I want to make a difference every day. I want everyone around me to try to make a difference. I want everyone around me to go home the same way they got to work, and work safely. You you will progress. You will thrive. You might not be CEO of the company. That's fine. You might not get that promotion you wanted, but if you live your life saying, I'm going to make a difference every day, then you'll be better off than 99% of people out there. It's just the way it is.
I love that because, in our industry, you got to work on, like you said, kind of like the project, right? Where it's you have the control, you get to pick the things, right? But a lot of the industrial automation space isn't like that, right? So it's figuring out how can I make a difference? This facility might be running on, I'm going to say we could have Windows XP running some of the most critical analyzers in the back of the room, that we've sort of forgotten about, or just it just keeps, making the budget next year and then it slips, right? There's plants like that all over the place. And so being able to, when I hear you talk about this new technology, I'm thinking like the electrical infrastructure in the US, like that's not a new place. So I just love the idea that like, being able to bring these new technologies in with these pilots, I think is a great kind of inspiration, and to be able to point out that sometimes it takes a little bit of legwork to convince people that the money needs to be spent, but you can do it, right? Like that's in your control. So I really like that story.
Thank you, and I'm really blessed to be a part of it. I mean, I have always wanted to be a part of great things, and I've never lived my life to set out to. I mean, I've never positioned myself where I can to be a part of the next great thing. Otherwise, I'd be a billionaire, right? I'd wait till Amazon goes public and I would invest in Amazon and not touch it for 20 years, or Bitcoin or something like that. I mean, I've always been somebody that just, I look at the world and I say, how can I make a difference? And I have been handed these opportunities. I have just fell backward into really cool jobs. And it's because I've just had really good advisors and really good mentors. And, if I could do a pitch to people who are listening, mentor somebody, go out and try to share what you know and help folks. I mentor through ISA, which if you're an ISA member and you're listening to this, you need to do that. You need to, especially if you got, 10 years or more where you can really provide value, be a mentor. And I also mentor through American Corporate Partners, which is an organization that helps military people make the transition from military life to civilian life. I've done that for the last 12 years. So actually longer than that, but I'm on number 11. So what I do is I help them find a job, or I help them with their resume. I help them, answer questions. So I had one recently one before this one that really had a good job. They just wanted to be able to ask me questions. And I said, well, I can't answer every question you have, but I'll get you an answer. Don't worry about that. And that was fun. It was just literally just created a relationship and just sharing what I know and sharing what I think can help. I mean, not everybody in that group wants the same thing, but it's just the staple of mentoring. If you can participate in that, you can help the world move forward, whether you think you are or not. So.
Well, and on the other side of that, take advantage of the mentoring too, right?
That's right.
That's something that I've learned on the entrepreneurship side, because I knew nothing when I started my business, and it has made a huge impact. But like it takes some effort, right, to find the right fit and to find the person who's, as excited as James is to share their knowledge, right? But a lot of people are, right? It's just a matter of finding that right personality fit for where you are and what you're looking to learn.
Exactly. And you have to have enough humility, and you have to be humble, and you have to have enough humility where you'll say, I need help. I don't mind asking for help. And I tie all that back to ego. And you can't live your life with an ego, because you'll never go anywhere. I mean, you'll be frustrated your entire life, so you got to let that go. And I can't tell you how many people have been mad at me, and even in the absence of feeling regret or guilt that I had done something I shouldn't have done, I still loved them and still told them I loved them. So you can be mad at me. I understand you're mad. I don't think it's justified, but I still love you, and I still want to help you. I still want to. So I never write anybody off. And it's amazing to me how people get just the slightest tinge from somebody that they're not appreciated, and they just hate the person. I just can't stand it. It's the most unproductive emotion you can have. You got to stay engaged, and you got to help people get past that ego and past that frustration. So it doesn't always work, but it is what it is.
That's what it is.
That's a great message to finish on. I know we could talk for hours and hours, so I hate to cut it off, but maybe you'll come back and do it. I was going to come back and do a second one with us another time, but
Sure.
for today, we really appreciate your time.
I can't tell you how honored I feel to be a part of this. Thank you so much. And I was telling my wife, I was like, I don't know what they want to know, because I know some stuff, but I don't think anything that I know is so compelling that people are going to want to listen to it. But she said, just tell them your philosophy of life, and I'm going to tell you this. You can edit it out if you want. It's fine, okay? But you want to hear the meaning of life?
Go for it.
Okay. So the purpose of life, all right, and this is very simple. It's very simple. The purpose of life is to love and be loved. That's it. Okay? The first part is easy. It's easy to find things within people that you love, that you can show love, and you can be good, right? Getting them to love you, you have no control over that, right? And some people overdo it, but as long as you can show love and you can tell people, look, I don't have an agenda here. I just want to be a part of your life, or I want to help you. I want to do whatever I can. As long as you show people love, they'll love you back, and that'll bring meaning to your life. That's it. If anybody else says he's smoking crack, the purpose of life isn't to love and be loved, you're doing it wrong. I'm sorry. So I'll leave you with that.
I love it. That's a great closer for us. Well, thanks, James, for joining us, and David for kind of hosting as we ran through today. And to all the tinkerers and thinkers out there, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you, Marsha, and thank you, David.